When you stare into the abyss stares back. I just quickly want to thank all the new people who have found the stuff I've been talking about interesting. I really appreciate that. But anyway, this is a bit of a dark one, and it's a subject matter that is not really gone into much within occult and magical circles that I firmly believe should be talked about. And it is in relation to Chris Chan as a kind of archetype of this happening. However, this is more in a broader spectrum. And yeah, with regards to the occult, the more and more you start getting into it, strange things will start to happen. The more sort of paranormal events will occur just kind of out of nowhere. And that's because when you start practicing magic, your central nervous system and your presence on the electromagnetic spectrum kind of increases, and you're almost like a beacon to these entities as something interesting, and they will sometimes come and out of curiosity, and that is a side effect of being involved with magic. And eventually it calms down, and you might experience things like catalytic sterilization phenomena. I remember a time when I was reading a book on magic, and I put the book down and then it just flew off the table. And yeah, like strange things will start to happen. And now, why am I talking about this, and what does this have to do with Chris? Well, Chris Chan is a magician. He just has terrible magical practice, and his psychic firewall, the thing that keeps entities from attaching themselves to him, his ability to stop being psychically attacked, is non-existent. And it's not only the entity that is most likely within him that is the problem, it's the people around you. This is where things get dark. You have to be very careful about the company you keep if you're practicing magic. And that is because some of these entities, when they take an interest in you, if they can't access you directly, they will find people who are psychically vulnerable around you, and they will attach themselves to them in order to get to you. And I'm dead serious when I say that. And with regards to these new people who have surrounded Chris during this period of time where his alleged incest with his mother has happened, these people are incredibly dark, whoever that person on the phone call was. And when you look at the pictures of them, I mean, it could be fake, but of Bella or whoever the fuck she is, she's just dead. There's nothing behind those eyes. It's just a autonomous complex being controlled by a pathological entity. And that's because Chris not only has all this fame and sensationalism around him that entities can feed off, he also is surrounded by people who are incredibly psychically weak. And these entities have been jumping into the people around him in order to manipulate Chris and get into Chris. And I know this sounds strange, but this is something that does happen with regards to people who are involved in magical practice. It's just not talked about very often. And the kind of people who are vulnerable are usually people who smoke copious amounts of marijuana. And I'm not talking about, a couple of spliffs, every now and then. I'm talking about people who smoke all day, and people who use heavy amounts of methamphetamine, and people with certain psychological problems like borderline personality disorder, bipolar, and schizophrenia, and people with a predisposition for these kind of problems. Now, not everybody who is classified under that is susceptible. However, I'm just talking about within the general spectrum. These people have a very vulnerable psychic firewall, and if they have close proximity to a magician, entities tend to try and utilize them in order to break the magician's metaphorical magic circle, their social circle around him, in order to get to the magician. And this is a very, very common and dangerous event in the occult. And like when dealing with demons, with regards to summoning a demon using something like the Goetia, and it will usually try and get you to break the magic circle that you've put around you, in using manipulation, lying, mesmerizing you, all sorts of things to try, and then they'll generally attack you or try and get in. And it's the same, it works the same way on the micro level, like with summoning an entity, or as it does with the macro. And with Chris Chan, all of these people are so dark. There is literally almost no one around him that is positive, or who looks like they are healthy and have a good protection of their own psyche. And the fact that these people wanted to get Chris to commit suicide, it's almost as if they're wanting to utilize this as a form of human sacrifice to get a massive charge of psychic energy that would be released upon doing that. And it's dark, and this is the kind of stuff that can happen when you get involved in magic. I mean, it's not for everyone. And what's happened with Chris is quite tragic. And in my own practice, I've had this happen to me, and I've had somebody who had extremely bad bipolar have be around me during a period of time where things were quite difficult for them. And the closer the proximity this individual had with me, the more manic they became, the more paranoid they became. And it just went up, 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 until I literally saw a demon sort of out of the corner of my eye running around in my apartment. And the only way that this ended was when this individual was no longer in proximity and far away, and then their mania just went gone. I've had the same thing with people who had serious meth addictions, and they'll start attacking me and becoming extremely paranoid. And a lot of it happens when you are doing some form of magical working or operation, because once you start an operation, you must finish it. You should never abandon any form of magical operation halfway through it, because it just opens you up to terrible, terrible consequences. And abandoning an operation, that is something that these entities usually try and get you to do. And they will Renfield like crazy, and they'll start getting involved in your personal life and doing everything to kind of push you away from the work that you're doing. And we all know that Christian is constantly doing magical operations with all that New Age bullshit. However, it doesn't take away the fact that he is actually doing it. And the company he keeps are so pathological, and it's just been a time bomb. I don't know how anyone didn't see something like this coming, or something even worse. And yeah, you have to be very careful. And to this day, I'm very, very cautious with the people around me when they start Renfielding and start behaving in these kind of archetypally in the ways that start to attack me, or become very passive aggressive and start to try and get involved and insert themselves, especially when I'm doing something involved with magic. It's almost, it can get quite disturbing. It's like having, sometimes it's the same entity, and it'll just keep jumping into the next person, the next person, the next person around you. It will follow you. Or there are so many things that can go wrong, because when you're working with magic and the occult, you have to realize you're not just dealing with, you know, some psychological way of looking at things. You're dealing with consciousness. You're dealing with the electromagnetic spectrum. You're dealing with things that we do not understand. You're dealing, you can get yourself entangled in things that are that will make you go insane. I mean, the majority of people that I've met in my life who are, you know, occultists or magicians and all that shit, like Christian, they did not end up well. They ended up going insane, committing suicide, destroying themselves, because they could not handle essentially what they have taken up. I mean, I think it was Alan Moore who said, you know, if you want to be a magician, you know, one day you might wake up and realize that you are one. I mean, I'm probably quoting it badly, but yeah, there's a lot you have to take into consideration, and you have to be very cautious. And Christian is a great example. He is reaping, as somebody mentioned to me, he is reaping the fruits of his labor. And the denizens of the abyss that have been surrounding him and manipulating him, trying to get involved, breaking his magic circle of his psyche. It's no wonder the kind of shit that has gone on is happening. And it's no wonder that he is in the kind of situation he's in. And this is the problem I have with Wicca and the New Age. And I don't want to put people down, but this stuff gets dark. And you have to face that. You have to face the shadow. Otherwise, things that are much more terrible will come out of it if you do not look into these aspects of things. However, if you stare too long into the abyss does stare back. I forgot who I'm quoting. It's either Nietzsche or Jung. But yeah, Chris Chan was not careful. He was all about love and light and all that stuff. And he's done now something more disturbing than anything most of us could have imagined Chris Chan doing. I mean, I think we all assumed that when Barb died, Chris would probably either get sectioned, which in Australian terms means, or formed, means you are taken into a locked psych ward against your will, or that he would have committed suicide after the death of Barb. But no, that hasn't happened, and not that I wanted those two endings, but the incest thing and the absolute insatiability of whatever entity's into him with the media frenzy that is fueling this thing. And as I said in my last video, most likely it will detach itself from Chris if it can, or it will jump into somebody close to Chris within jail when it's no longer getting the fuel. And, I am fueling this thing. And I'm fueling the pathological consciousnesses of the people around Chris Chan who helped normalize some of these things, even though the incest aspects seem to be mostly Chris or whatever is in Chris. All the other things that these people are into, like and attacking trans people to try and get them to commit suicide, trying to animal cruelty, the possible link to pedophilia. This is all coming together pretty well into a absolute disaster of what happens if you practice magic and you fuck up. And I'm not perfect, and this is still on a kind of philosophical level. I'm not a fascist trying to tell that it is this way, but I'm just trying to give examples because there are a lot of people who are out there who don't know about a lot of this stuff and get involved and don't take this into consideration. And it's the same when you're working in groups for in Magic. You have to be very careful about the people you are involved with. Even if you're within an organization like the Auto Temple Orientis or something, you have to be very careful of the psychic state of everyone within that room who is involved within the operation, and then the people linked to those people. And sometimes it can be like a creepy horror movie where an entity that is trying to attack you, it will just keep jumping into people with these sort of problems, and these people will behave in the same kind of way. For example, somebody with bipolar, their mania will start to become almost identical in behavior to a meth addict you knew who started to degenerate around you. And it's very creepy, and it'll follow you around. And I've known people who have had to go to other states to get away from entities that have been trying to attach themselves to them. And yeah, with regards to Chris Chan, I think he's one of the greatest examples of what can happen if you do not look at the shadow and the dark side of your magical practice and your psyche and what it can turn into. And if Chris knew anything about magic and the occult, like he claims to, but because it's all that new age stuff, all love and light, he never looked into the dark aspects within him that a pathological consciousness will attach itself to and draw out things that you may never even think that you would be capable of, that are deep within your subconscious or your unconscious, and are just waiting to come out and be exploited. If you don't deal with that, the consequences are terrible, and what's happened to Chris is the consequence of that. And it's the same with the company he keeps, just denizens of the abyss. Anyway, thank you for watching. And I've gone on a bit of a rant here, but yeah, I'm not trying to dissuade people from getting involved with this stuff, and I'm not trying to attack anybody either who's involved in Wicca or the New Age movement. But I really think people need to look into the abyss more, rather than pretending it doesn't exist and pushing it aside, because the abyss will come out. And it came out with Chris. And I don't particularly want that to continue to happen. Anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good day.